Good morning. I'm on quite early today, looking at Leviticus chapters 14 through 16. And as chapter 13 yesterday talked about leprosy, and all of the laws concerning leprosy, of how to, what the people had to do and everything. I thought that was done, but no, it's not. I mean, I knew better, because chapter 14 deals with all of the rituals for cleansing and the healing, the cleansing of the healed leper. So once the leper is determined to be no longer leprous by the priest, then chapter 14 goes into great detail of everything that they need to do to be considered cleansed, to be considered clean, and talks about the law concerning the house and the clothing and all of those things, even as much as the detail of chapter 13 was. Just an awful lot of detail that way. Chapter 15 talks about bodily discharges. I mean, and it's talking about sexual relationships between a husband and a wife, and being unclean because of that. It talks about women's menstrual cycles. It talks about different things that go on within our bodies that then create us or cause us to be, or cause people to be unclean because of those things that way. And these are some of the chapters that really just kind of bog me down again too. Chapter 16, God talks to Moses about the Day of Atonement. The Passover was to be celebrated in the first month. The Day of Atonement was a lot of preparation for it and everything here in chapter 16, and then the Day of Atonement is during the seventh month of the year. So and a time again to set aside time to make a sacrifice to God for the atonement for all of the sins of the people, so that they would be then acceptable in God's sight and acceptable in others as well that way. And I want to just, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about those. I'm not, probably not going to spend a lot of time today with this, but on the offerings that the Israelites were to bring, the burnt offerings were first described in chapter 1, verses 3 through 17, and then again in verse 6. But the burnt offering was an offering for the atonement of sins, the atonement, at-one-ment, becoming one with God again, becoming acceptable to God, so that cleansed that way. And it would show the Israelites' complete dedication to God. And so then it would be the burnt offering would be the entire animal would be burnt then to God. And the burnt offerings were to be, an unblemished bull, an unblemished male sheep, or a goat, or 2 turtle doves, or young pigeons. Very specific in the burnt offerings. The grain offering always accompanied a burnt offering, and the grain offering was given more to show thanksgiving to God for the atonement, for the burnt offering, for being able to come back to Him. So the grain offerings were offered as fine flour mixed with oil and frankincense, as a spice, or they were offered as a cake that was baked with the fine flour and yeast and raised up, or they could. And then also just the green heads, brought in from the grain could be a grain offering. A peace offering was another one, the third offering that they would offer, that they were instructed to. And this would express the relationship, the fellowship between the worshiper and God, like we will say, maybe the peace of the Lord be with you, and we will say also with you. Well, the peace offering was the relationship between the worshiper and God. And again, the peace offerings were mainly an animal, and an unblemished male or female from the herd, from the flock that way. And it could be from the herd. So a cow, a bull, or it could be from the flock, a sheep or a goat, or it could be from the sheep or the goats rather. So the peace offering was made that way, just to show that these people were thankful for the blessings that they had received from God. They were given to God when someone had made a promise, and the promise had been seen that way. And sometimes they had what they called a free will offering, which was just offering thanks to God as a general purpose. I thank my God for life itself. I mean, it's just different peace offerings that way. A sin offering was an offering made for a specific sin rather, and sometimes I talked about the unintentional sins that were brought up in there and stuff. So a sin offering was made for a known sin or for an unintentional sin. And the high priest did almost all of these. Sometimes one of the lesser priests could, but for the most part, Aaron, who was the high priest, was responsible for doing all of these offerings. And the fifth offering that they would come to with God was the trespass offering, and it was again, the trespass offering was for sins known and unknown, and for things that maybe they had maybe rather than done against God had been done against their fellow human being that way. But it was so very specific on so many of these things, and when I'm reading through so much of this, just like the ritual for the cleaning of the healed leper in chapter 14, I can't keep track of everything. They just kind of seem to blend together so often, some of these different sacrifices and offerings, and it's very repetitious in many ways. You do this, and then 7 days later you get checked, and then on the 8th day you do this again, and the doing on the 8th day for the cleansing of the leper would go back to on the 8th day of a male infant being born was the day that they were to be circumcised, to be set aside for God, that way, to be named for God. And so on the 8th day, maybe it signified a rebirth then, that they could rejoin the community. There are so many things that could be, that different people kind of wonder about. Bible scholars is what I'm meaning by that. And there's just a lot of I don't know if I should say controversy, but there are a lot of different opinions on so many people about a lot of these different things that God says to the people in all of these laws. And like at the end of chapter 16, it says that this shall be an everlasting statute for you to make atonement for the children. It's everlasting. You do it on a regular basis. It's just like the Passover meal. You will do this on an annual basis. The Day of Atonement, you will do this on an annual basis. And so we've got a few more chapters of Leviticus to plod through and upcoming days, and we'll just kind of continue to do that. But it's in so many ways, there's a lot of Leviticus that, it's highly detailed, and I'm glad that as a pastor, I don't have to know all of that and to perform all of those rituals and sacrificial offerings anymore. Thankful that Jesus came into this world and paid the price so that we can come to God confessing our sins on our own and knowing that we are loved and forgiven and a part of his family.